I've overdosed, over a dozen different times. The most significant overdose I'd had, it was 5 a.m. I was at my dad's house, and the EMTs and paramedics came in. I remember them saying, "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" And I'm like, "What happened to me?" And I remember just kind of like sucking air and like, "What happened to me?" And I was at this place of darkness when I was unconscious to where I didn't know what was up or down. But I knew that I was going to hell, man. I knew that I was living wrong.
Like a feeling of dread.
Dread, the most overwhelming sense of dread I've ever had in my life. You would think that would be enough to scare me straight. Got right back out and started the same old stuff, man.
All right, guys, we'd like to thank y'all for tuning in to Redemption Road Podcast again. I'm Mookie, and I've got a special treat for y'all today. I'm here with probably one of the best running backs to ever come out of Pulaski County, and a guy that I work with and I'm a very good dear friend to, and his name is Brandon Tomlinson, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his involvement and his involvement with the rehab and a little bit of his story on how he got here to where he's at today.
Thank you, Mookie. Well, I'm definitely not the best running back to come out, but I like to say I held my own back in the day. So you would like to know about my involvement with the rehab?
Well, first, Brandon, if you don't care, would you just kind of tell us a little bit of your background, of your story, like how you grew up and stuff?
Absolutely.
Where you're from and all that good
For
stuff.
sure. So I was actually born and raised in Somerset, Kentucky, a few counties from here. A little area known as Lake Cumberland. You actually went coon dog hunting down there.
Yeah, so
last
you're right.
week.
You're right back in the mountains.
Yes, I'm in the mountains.
Right,
So
straight up.
they had to
mountains.
pop sunshine in.
Yeah.
So I grew up there. My mother and father was divorced. Growing up, my dad was an alcoholic. It was kind of normal for me. He had parties when I was younger. I think I may have even had my first sip of beer when I was just a child. But, growing up, I'd like to think my childhood was pretty normal. Going into middle school and high school, I found I liked to play football. It's too short for basketball.
Yeah.
But it was pretty simple enough, take the ball and run.
Yeah.
Going into high school, I think that's where every kid's trying to find their
Trying to fit in
Trying to
somewhere.
fit in, yeah. Trying to find their
and
niche.
And football team's kind of like a family, like
Yeah.
an extended family. You got your coaches, which are disciplinary.
Yep.
Then you got your teammates, which are like brothers, or
Yeah, for sure. So it was like a brotherhood,
Yeah.
So I met some of my best friends, growing up in that culture. Trying to fit in, they're all getting into other things. I think first we started smoking marijuana, then drinking. And we were just trying to party, just being kids, trying to have a good time.
Yeah.
I think I even tried smoking cigarettes, but I just didn't really stick to me at the time.
Yeah.
Running and
It's hard.
smoking.
It's hard to
It's hard
keep
to run.
Your breath.
It's hard to run and smoke.
when you smoke cigarettes.
So, so moving forward, going on through high school, I remember my grandmother, she's passed away now, bless her heart, but she had a prescription of pain medicine. But I remember going in there. She didn't take them, they made her sick. But I had some injuries I thought were sufficient enough to need medicated. So I asked her, I'm like, hey, can I take some of your pain medicine? Like my back's hurting, whatever.
Yeah.
First time I took a pain pill, I realized like
Now how old was you when this is?
I was about 17. I was 17 years old,
17?
going on 18. So I was a
Yeah.
senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I remembered at that point, though, taking it the first time, the warm feeling it gave me.
Yeah.
I remember just kind of the all-in-all feeling that I'd been searching for.
Yeah.
I'd tried other drugs, but that was really what I liked.
Yeah.
And it played a big part moving on into later on in my life.
Yeah.
Graduating so my senior year of high school, I started doing all these different things. They implemented drug testing during that year. Got caught.
Because you were on the football team.
I was on the
right?
football team. I drove to school. I was in
Yeah.
a club or so. Any extracurricular activities, you were
Yeah.
thrown in a pool to be tested.
Yeah.
So I was tested. I failed. And at that point, I got kicked off the football team. You lost all your privileges. My world came crashing down. I thought it was over. I remember getting into fights at school after that. Just losing interest in everything. I was just kind of numb to everything after that. Because that was my hopes, that was my dreams, all up to there. As a kid, that's all you could see. So I did graduate by the skin of my teeth, and I remember my father being like, "Hey, you're not going to school, you're going to work."
Yeah, so I know you've worked for the biggest part of your life, your dad was already a plumber, and
Yeah.
so like you kind of carried on to his footsteps, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the construction field, I went into plumbing. My uncle did heating and air and plumbing, so I joined a company with him first, doing heating and air for Walmart Supercenters, and we travel and hang duct work, and I was the flunky, so
Yeah.
they just hand me up there and hand tools and stuff. So, but that's how I got into the construction crew, construction area of work, and with that type of work came a lot of exposure to other drugs.
yeah, absolutely.
Different trades.
So when
would-
you're on these big job sites, man, you've got guys that are they're coming from everywhere.
Yeah, 'cause you've
and
done drywall
they're-
yourself, so you
yeah,
know.
they're coming
Yeah.
from everywhere. They're doing all different kinds of trades, man. A lot of it's strenuous, so a lot of guys take medicine to help
Yeah.
them, or illegally take medicine to help them,
Right.
whichever way.
And a lot of those things were like mundane tasks, so you're like, over and over repetition. So I think a lot of it was to get them out of their mind while they're doing it,
Yeah.
But anyways, so at that point, I remember doing that for a few years. When I was 21, I just turned 21. I got caught with some marijuana driving one weekend, so they put me on a misdemeanor probation, and they started drug testing me, so I
Yeah.
couldn't smoke marijuana or do drugs anymore. So I turned to alcohol for the
Yeah.
first time. Something I swore off. I was like, I'll never be like my father. I
Yeah,
won't turn
seeing
into a
your
drug.
dad drinking,
Seeing my
all that
dad
stuff,
drinking,
yeah.
seeing what it did to him and how, it just hindered him in parts of his life. I was
Yeah.
never going to do that.
Yeah.
One of the many things I swore I'd never do. So, I swore off on that, but I ended up just doing exactly that. I left the bar one night. I was drunk. Had been drinking. It wasn't wet in Pulaski County at the time, but it was moist or
Yeah.
damp or whatever.
Yeah.
So they sold alcohol in restaurants.
In the restaurants, yeah.
So, needless to say, I would reach my legal limit at one, so I would go to the next one. And I was pretty intoxicated by the time I left there.
Yeah, because Somerset's a pretty big place, man.
Yeah.
You hang around there. There's a lot going on in Somerset.
Yeah, even on a Tuesday night, I managed to just get completely wiped
Yeah.
out drunk. And I left that day, that evening on Oak Hill Road, and I remember I had wrecked and crashed, hit a bunch of cars. And I remember being scared, 21 years old on misdemeanor probation.
Yeah.
So I just put it in reverse, and I fled. And, I remember, waking up that next day in jail, and there was a Hispanic guy in there, and, of course, the famous, "What are you in here for?" He's like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "I don't know, man." So I whipped out my paperwork, and there's lines of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man, when am I getting out of here?" And I remember him saying, "You got a felony, Holmes. You're not getting out of here." And I
You're
was
done
like,
for.
"What's a felony?" So went through.
So that's probably your first major trouble.
that was my first
you'd
major
ever
trouble.
been
Yeah,
in
first
trouble.
time I
Yeah.
ever really went to jail. More than an overnight stay
Yeah.
for, like a possession of marijuana or something.
Yeah.
But I ended up, getting out of jail and getting on a diversion. Part of it was to go to EMT school, where you become like a
Yeah.
EMT, like a basic for an ambulance service. Didn't really fall through with it because I got back on drugs again.
Yeah.
Started drinking heavy.
Yeah. So I know there's been several times in your life that you have tried to get clean and successfully done that for a
Yeah.
little while, but there just was no substance to it because you weren't trying to serve the Lord or nothing like that.
I didn't have any concept of God or anything in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a child, I went to Bible school. My Aunt Kay and my
Yeah.
Uncle Jerry would take me to school or take me to Bible school and would take me to Sunday church and service. So I had a concept of that. But as I grew older, wouldn't hang out with my friends. I grew away from that.
Yeah.
So after my first real, sentence, and then that diversion failed, I ended up having to go to prison time, and I ended up getting out after 30-some months. I would do good for a little bit, fall back off. I remember when the 30s started coming
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
People were going to Florida, bringing them back. I got
Yep.
into that for a little bit, doing those. They got so high, they were like 50, 60
Yeah, man,
bucks a
it
piece.
was a devastating thing
Yeah.
for southeastern Kentucky. The
Oh, yeah.
pipeline, man, backwards and forwards. That's a lot of people, man.
Yeah,
Or-
so it ruined a lot of lives,
Yeah.
and I took control of mine. So I eventually, I said I can't do it, so I would use, Suboxone, trying to get off that, and then I got introduced to heroin, and that's when my
Yeah.
life really started to turn to the worst. Something I swore I would never do would be use a needle.
yeah,
And I remember the first time I was using with a person, they had a box of clean needles, and ended up, I didn't know how to do it, so they
Yeah.
shot me up, and because they was telling me I was wasting my drugs any
Yeah.
other way, and that got me on another bad path. To where I was going to links I'd never gone before. I was going to a path I never thought I'd go down to.
Yeah.
And it ultimately led to me getting trafficking charges,
Yeah.
having to go through the court system, getting on probation for that, going to rehabs. I've been to probably a dozen different
Yeah.
rehabs. I've overdosed,
Yeah.
gosh, over a dozen different times. And the most significant overdose I'd had, most significant spiritual aspect of it, I remember I was entering one of these 30-day treatment centers.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I'm going to get out, go back to my life. That very day, I ran into someone at the gas station, man. I remember he's like, hey, man, where you been? I was like, I've been in treatment. He's like, that's good, man. Here's my number. If you need anything, let me know. And I called him. It was like having that in my pocket.
Yeah.
I called him. I ended up getting his number, and I relapsed that night. Nothing horrible happened. I guess I didn't have any major consequences, but the next morning, I had overdosed. It was 5 a.m. I was at my dad's house, and I remember like the EMTs and paramedics came in, and they doing a sternum rub and me throwing up all this stuff and foam.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying, are you okay? Can you hear me? And I'm like, what happened to me? And I remember just kind of like sucking air and like, what happened to me? Because I couldn't breathe. Like the wind just got knocked out of me. And I was at this place of darkness when I was unconscious to where I didn't know what was up or down.
Yeah.
Didn't know where I was, but I knew that I was
It
going
was-
to hell, man. I
yeah.
knew that I was living wrong.
Like a feeling of dread.
Dread, the most
Yeah.
overwhelming sense of dread I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
You would think that would be enough to scare me straight. It didn't. Got right back out and started the same old stuff, man. And, eventually, like you said, I was getting sober, relapsing. It was just a cycle.
It's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Once you get
And the
into
very
it.
last time I'd used, I'd relapsed for the millionth time, and I was trying to hide it from my family. I'd been using for over a year, and I didn't want anybody to know. So I'd get on Suboxone for a while and then
Yeah.
get back off. You know how that goes. And I had went and got some drugs, and I'd used it, and I had overdosed again. And once again, my parents had walked in where I was living and found me overdosed with a needle in my
Yeah.
arm, and I went to treatment. And I remember the cops came, and they were sitting there like, what are we going to do? And I remember he was a pastor at a church from when I was little, and I said, I'll never forget, I told him, I said, I need some help. I need to go to
Yeah.
treatment. So at the time, Redemption Road wasn't around then.
Yeah.
There wasn't a men's program to go to. It was just the women's, Hope City.
Yeah.
So I went to a place there locally, that was close to Somerset, and did a 30-day detox.
Yeah.
And at that point, I knew of Scott and Tammy. I'd been over here, and I'd seen kind of like
Yeah.
what they were doing, and I knew they were great people.
Yeah. So you knew you have a very special person that was introduced to Scott and Tammy before that, and it be your now she's your wife. But
Yes.
it's
Yes.
Genevieve.
Yes, so,
Yeah.
my girlfriend then, my wife now.
Yeah. Partner in crime.
Partner in crime. She had actually got caught was doing some of the stuff with me.
Yeah.
And part of her conditions were go to treatment. And she came to Hope City. Scott and Tammy interviewed her. She ended up over here, and she had been serving the Lord probably 4 or 5 years. I noticed there was a change in her. I noticed that no longer I could offer the things that I used to of this
Yeah,
world.
of course.
She was just a completely different person. She was serving Christ. And I was envious of that, but she was the only person I had left at the end, man. And she said, you got an option. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm at treatment now. I'm going to go back to work. I could straighten up. I can do better now. All those broken promises I'd
Yeah.
always tried to deliver
Yeah.
before. And she said, no, you're not. She's like, I won't be with you if you do. And I said, well, she's like, not with me in it. So she's like, you're going to come to Barberville, and you're going to try to do something different with your life. So,
I know it was like a culture shock to you
For sure.
actually coming to Barberville.
yeah, the very
Yeah.
first night I came, being a man that hadn't been in church in several, almost a decade or
Yes.
more, I came into a church service. Everybody was singing these songs, but there was no literature. There was no sheet music.
Yeah.
Nothing was on a screen. There wasn't even a hymnal book.
Yeah.
But everybody knew the words. So
Yeah.
I felt out of place. I remember
Yeah.
just sitting there trying to fit in,
Yeah.
But I remember just being so anxious and uncomfortable, not because of the people, just because of who I was inside. I was
Yeah.
I was filled with shame, guilt,
Absolutely.
remorse. But in that moment, I felt Christ tug on my heart. I felt the need to reach out to him. I don't remember what Scott was preaching about, but I remember sitting there just crying and just wanting to to have that love of Christ that he was.
Yeah, so a lot of times, man, when God moves on us like that, man, we don't understand. Like I
No.
can remember when I was in the jail cell, man, the God moved and He took away that want that I had to do meth all the time, man. I wanted it worse than I did anything, but God took that away from me, and I can remember there was a preacher there, but I can't remember
Yeah.
what he was even talking about or nothing. But I knew that there was something to it, that God had touched me, you know,
Yeah.
and I knew that, you know, that right there in that moment that I could do without drugs,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, the first time in my life that's ever happened to where I knew that everything was going to be okay. And I seen all these people and the joy in their heart, you
Yeah.
know, and I seen that they had purpose and that God was just doing something amazing in their lives, and all these women that had got their children back.
Yeah.
That,
So that-
God had restored all this
And
stuff.
that's one of the greatest. You come in here and you're like, you know, all these people are here, and you're like, wow, man. But
Yeah.
the main thing is, man, that everybody you look at, man, they're smiling.
Yeah.
They're happy, and you're
Yeah.
like, hey, you know, I haven't been happy in years.
Yeah,
you know?
what's happy? Yeah.
Yeah. What's these? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
what is it? And you find out that common denominator in all of them's life is it is God, that they have a relationship with Jesus. And,
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
And I was skeptical at first, you know,
Yeah.
as everyone would be, you know. But I knew that, you know, my prayer was something simple. I think I was like, you know, God, I don't even know if you know who I am.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
But I want this. I want to have a relationship with you. I want these
Absolutely.
promises
Yeah.
that the pastor is saying is in the Bible. Like, I want this in my life. And I knew something was going to be different, you
Yeah.
know. And I was going through some mental stuff. I was hearing voices still. I was doing all these different things that was barriers to me. But
Yeah.
months later, I got it straightened out. You know, God got it straightened out.
Yeah.
But I was willing to do a little work on my part, you know. And I remember just walking around with, you know, every day Scott would pick me up. There wasn't a rehab, so
Yeah.
he would pick me up every morning at 9 a.m. man, and
Just
and
discipling you.
Just I didn't know it at the time, but you know, he was
Yeah.
mentoring me. It was a discipleship.
Yeah.
But I'd watch him, man. I'd watch him go in the community. I'd watch him the way he conducted himself, you know, and everything I seen, I couldn't poke holes through it like I tried.
Yeah.
It was it was Christ shown through him,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm so thankful for that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm thankful. I remember you, Mookie, when
Yeah,
you first came in.
so that's what that brings me to one of the coolest things, though. So like you actually didn't go to Redemption Road.
No.
So like you were actually, when I came to Redemption Road, I was the fifth person there. There was already 4 guys there,
Yeah.
you know, and it wasn't even Redemption Road then. It was just a, you know, just a trial, I guess.
Didn't even have a name for it
Yeah,
yet.
so,
yeah.
so
I remember,
I
what the
remember
name
you
was.
were working there, so
Yeah.
you had started trying to work there, and so man, that's been 4 years ago.
4
now,
years ago,
you
yeah.
know, and so
Over 4 years
yeah.
ago.
So right now we are at our 30-day facility.
Yes.
So this facility, I think, has been ran for what, 2 years?
A little over 2 years now.
And,
yeah. I think it'll
uh,
be 2 years in a month or so. Or maybe it'll be 2 years in April.
And so actually,
Something like
it's where I work at, and
Yeah.
it's where Brandon works at. And Brandon, won't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do here at the 30-day facility?
Okay. So here at the 30-day facility, this wasn't always here.
Yeah.
Like we started off
Yeah, we started off with that one little
out in
house
Gray.
out
We
there.
had
in
one little
Grace.
house.
Yeah.
You was one of the 5 first clients that we got. I remember there was 4 of us
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
It was me, Neil, Josh, and Tyler. I remember us taking shifts. We'd work like 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you used to come out there and sleep with us. And
Yeah, I
everything.
mean,
Yeah,
it was
stay all night. and
It was
everything.
it was wild. You
Yeah.
know, I thought God was preparing us in that moment.
Yeah.
But you know, just getting everything together, getting all the regulations together, scheduling. Like God just kept sending us stuff we needed. But I remember our capacity to grow was just needed, and we just kept
Yeah.
getting bigger and bigger. And then you know, as we went along, God's kind of opened more things up. We've seen what worked and what didn't. And there was a point to where some of us guys got together, was kind of running the business here, and we're like, hey, or the ministry, and we're like, hey, you know, we need somewhere where these guys can go. It's going to be more quiet.
Yeah.
It's going to be more laid back.
Yeah.
People coming off drugs and detoxing.
Because it's a little chaotic down there at the farm.
Yeah, it is at first. I mean, it's a lot to get thrown into.
Yeah,
so
it is.
You needed that time of place, that time of peace, and that time to get alone with God. You know, and I think
Yeah.
that's why we opened up our second facility called Phase 1, Redemption Road Recovery Center Phase 1.
Yeah.
So here I am one of the center directors. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Got many hats I wear. I can be a maintenance man. I can be
Yeah.
a painter. I can be a cook. I can be
Yeah.
you know.
So, man, the main important thing is that we all just chip in, man, and
For sure.
we do what God's called us to do, man.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, man. So So we get to see these guys come in, and they're coming in, man. Like most of
Broken.
them, yeah, they're broken, they're sick.
Disheartened, hopeless.
This is
Yeah.
the first place that they come to, and it's just watching them grow through it.
Yeah.
First 30 days, trying to pour into them, be a mentor,
Getting the
to
love
them,
on them
yeah.
and just let them know like there's hope.
Yeah,
You know,
so,
that's the
man.
main thing. Like there's hope in Jesus, and a lot of these guys, including myself, I didn't have hope. You know,
No,
I was on the
sure.
verge to where I was suicidal. I don't know about you, but there
Yeah.
wasn't much to live for in those days.
I mean, I didn't. I wasn't calling myself suicidal, but the things that I were doing
was
were
killing
definitely
yourself
killing.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was definitely classifying
Yeah.
on a clinical level, but
Yeah.
So it's just been great, man. You know, getting to work with these men, but through that, you know, we've got so many different programs going on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we had partnered with the college where we got
Yeah.
some guys and ladies signed up for classes and
Yeah.
you know going towards different trades and areas. You know, there's many of us we're going after. I'm one of them. You know, going after our CADC certificate. You know, so we can actually be licensed clinicians and help these guys on a totally different clinical level.
Yeah.
So. It's just been a journey, man, and God's been through it all. He's blessed me with a beautiful, loving wife,
Absolutely.
a beautiful little 1-year-old boy named Rhett.
Yeah.
You know, he's wild, but you
Yeah.
know, we love something I always wanted was a family, you know,
Yeah.
and of my own. And he's just given me all that more. You know?
Yeah.
God's given me that all and everything I could ever
Yeah,
ask
man.
for.
So
more.
it's true, man. That if you will make him the center of your life, man, you can act. So you don't even have life until you start
Yeah.
serving Christ, man. It's the truth, and there's so many guys that come in and they it's only because they're not familiar to it or they've
Yeah.
never been around it and they're kind of hesitant, you know.
Yeah.
But they see what's going on with all of us and these other guys around here and these new clients that's graduated stuff, man, and it's. And they want that, man. It's it's magnetic, you know. Everybody, it's attractive. People wants to, you know, they just want to have a life, you
Yeah.
know. And there is no life that you can have without God, you know.
That's exactly right.
And he's so man, he's definitely blessed us. I know that I've known you for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
I've got Brandon, I would say, one of my close friends.
sure.
Me and him, we've rode 4-wheelers together.
Yeah.
We've done this, we've done that. We've been all over the place, you
Yeah.
know. And it's good, man. It's good to have friends that also share the same thing, that God is the center of their life,
Yeah.
man. Because that is where true friendship is, you know.
Absolutely.
So I guess with that being said, guys, you got anything else, Brandon, that you'd like to add?
I think it summed it up. You know, I think.
Yeah.
I
So,
think
guys, if y'all are ever struggling with addiction, you know, y'all could get up with Redemption Road here in Kentucky. We'll let you know if we've got beds available. A lot of times we do. Most of the times we don't. But where we do have the 30-day facility, we are able to get beds
Yeah.
more available because we just got guys staying here for 30 days, so it kind of switches in and out. So you guys just give us a call if you need help, man, and just know that God loves you and that there is a good life out there for you.
Amen.
Yeah.